This week, we are going to discuss Derrick Johnson's mental cheat code. Now, Derrick provided a ton of depth on how to strive to be successful through his own experiences and those that were around him that just helped elevate his game. But he really dove into what a mental cheat code for him that would be really important to utilize, and that he suggested all of you try on your own. So his mental cheat code is do the extra things to be 1% better.
To do a little extra when it comes to my body work, when it comes to prehabbing, making sure my body's right, making sure my mind is right, just in general, just doing everything, doing the extra, just a little bit extra, just getting 1% better every day.
This idea is really deceptively simple. Looking for small ways in which to improve what you're doing and the impact it has in many different aspects of what you're working on. So doing the little things to be 1% better, doing those extra things, I really wanted to break that down. And I don't want it to be cliche. And I know that DJ did not mean it to be cliche. And clearly, as you listen to his story, and if you missed it, please go check out the episode. But he mentions that he didn't start doing these extra things until later on in his career. He had already had a lot of success. He had already kind of quote unquote made it in some areas. But what he noticed, to elevate his game beyond those that were around him, he really had to start taking time to do the routine things on a consistent basis. And that's what I want us to kind of hone in on, from a sports psychology, a high performance setting, and how, from the mental health perspective, how doing these quote unquote extra things, or what I want to break it down to actually being doing the routine things intentionally and purposefully, will then give you that 1% difference that will help elevate your game. It will help you stand out, and you'll see a significant amount of results. So this practice of striving to be 1% better really is invaluable. It's incremental improvements that foster a growth mindset. It emphasizes progress over perfection, and it really reduces the pressure of unrealistic expectations. Small, consistent efforts compound over time. I want to say that again. Small, consistent efforts compound over time that lead to significant improvement gains while also helping you maintain motivation and being resilient. And I really want to hone in on this resilient aspect because it's not just in my framework and how I really utilize resiliency. It's not you are resilient because you're overcoming a difficult situation or a loss, or you're working through this kind of problem and you have to fight through it. That's one component of resiliency. But if you look at resiliency as you're choosing to put in the effort on a consistent basis, you are choosing to do the work. You are pushing through the positive emotions you have, you're pushing through the negative emotions, you're pushing through everything. That is resiliency. That is growth. That is you are sustaining the environment you're in to ultimately lead to the outcome you want to have. And we know that not every condition that you're in, not every environment you're in is ideal. There are difficulties. And that's why I love Derrick's cheat code, because if we do these little things on a consistent basis, we will see a difference. So what I want to break that down with you is being routined, being oriented. We've already heard that in other episodes too, right? Alex mentioned the idea of preparation. So please go check out Alex's episode, because these two are building off of each other. But when we break down the extra things, look at what are you doing currently in your day-to-day that you can say, hey, you know what? If I actually did this consistently, with intention, with a purpose, I could see that would not only help my performance, but it would help me manage my anxiety. It would reduce my stress level. It would provide a sense of accomplishment. And those three things lead into ultimately amazing well-being, which is a huge piece for me. I'm hey, let's build your mental wellness. Not only are you going to improve your performance, but you're going to improve your mental health by just being consistent in your routines. It's crucial to sustain mental health and peak performance. So let's break it down. What are these extra things? They're really what everyone preaches to you from a high performance setting, from a high performance team, from your coaching perspective. You've probably been implementing them at times when told to, but you haven't time blocked them in your schedule and utilize the intent behind it. So when I look at showing up to training, do I just show up and I go train and my body is expected to perform its best? Or do I need to actually block out a little bit more time ahead of the game and say, okay, what am I eating, right? Let's start there. Am I fueling my body properly for what I'm about to go in and ask it to physically perform? Okay, we check off nutrition. And this is just pre-performance, right? Nutrition is an all-day thing that we need to look at, of like how I'm post-recovering, how I'm eating in between, am I getting the right supplements and nutrients? Those are like a huge component of the extra things that make that 1% better in your performance and your life. So nutrition, right? Are we fueling the right way ahead of a performance? Am I mentally engaging before the performance? Do I do any mindfulness meditation? Do I focus on my breath? You are going to hear me throughout tons of things talking about intentional breathing being one of the biggest mental tools you can add to your mental cheat code player performance book. Like, you need to focus on just your breath work, allowing yourself to slow down, be locked into that present moment, bringing awareness to the self. And so are you actually activating your mindset ahead of your training? Are you using that as a reflective process afterwards? The mental side of the game is the little things you need to do on a consistent basis. So in preparation to performance, we have to think about, am I providing the right nutrients? Am I mentally locking in with what my intention is going to be that day? Am I getting myself in the right emotional state? Oh, and let's talk about like the body, right? Are you prehabbing? All the time we talk about rehabbing. And I think there's been a real shift that, some of these athletes are like, well, I don't need to go to the training room. I'm not hurt. Like, nothing's wrong with me. Like, the training room used to have this, like, whoa, watch out. Like, let's not step in there because we don't want to get hurt. We don't want to jinx it. And I'm saying, let's step in there. Let's get our body activated. Let's take care of it before there is a problem, right? Let's warm it up in specific ways. Let's roll out our body, talk to your trainers, talk to your strength conditioning coaches, figure out what is the best way to get your body activated for what you're going to ask it to do. And what's the best way to cool it down and have recovery processes that allow you to have sustained physical growth and recovery so it can perform when you're asking it to perform. I mean, already we're like, oh man, we got to add so much more time to our training. And yeah, you're not wrong. Like, time blocking is essential to doing the extra things to be 1% better. You are going to have to be very mindful to say, okay, when do I need to show up for my training? When do I need to prehab? When do I need to get my mind ready? When do I need to lock in with the emotional components? Am I eating the right way? Am I training in that moment and asking my body to do what it needs to do? Then do I recover properly? Nutrition, stretching, rolling, ice baths, all the things, massages. That's a lot. And then we haven't talked about if you have to go to class or if you have to go to work and how you navigate those things and your social obligations. Sometimes doing the extra things to be 1% better is actually taking time to engage in social life and social activities. Now, I'm not encouraging you to go out and like party. Like, I'm saying, like, be smart about your social choices. But there's a huge component about social connection that adds value to our mental health and our well-being and our joy. Like, fun is a key aspect that's going to make you perform better and allowing you to be happier. Half the reason why we do our sports, actually, research tells us the reason why individuals start doing sport is for fun. We also know the reason why people drop out of sport is because it's not fun. Even when you are a high performer, an elite athlete, like, you need to have fun and be happy. So make sure that when you're doing these extra things and you want to be 1% better, sprinkle in some fun in that, like, time blocking, and engage with peers and teammates. And if you have romantic partners, like, engage in time to connect with them. And your life's not revolving around just your sport performance, right? You're becoming a whole person, right? I always talk about the person within the player. That sport is what we do. It is a part of who we are, not all of who we are, right? Those are essential things for you. Another aspect of these extra things is kind of studying the game. Every sport is different. Every high performer for an executive realm, studying the game thing is also like you're learning your CEUs, right? Like, all of my high performers out there listening, the learning aspect of what you're doing and what you're asking to perform is very essential. In an athletic framework, we're going to say, like, are you watching film? Are you doing your playbook? Are you watching the game? Athletes that you aspire to? Are you learning on your own? The best way that you learn. And so taking time to navigate and figure out, like, hey, like, how can I be better? How can I get the feedback that I need to get to enhance my skills? Like, where am I leaning into that curiosity side of the game? Those are the extra things. I have a story I'll share that one of the clients I was working with we were talking about this specific task, and he's very into it, and he's planning through it, and he's seeing the results, and I'm saying, man, like, you're doing it, you're utilizing the tools that I'm giving you, but it does take work. And he's like, yeah, it takes work to plan how to be successful. And when I heard those words back, I'm like, like, there is an element of planning to be successful and committing to be successful. And I think this is what Derrick was trying to tell us as well, of these little extra things, like, they're a huge difference maker for you. They will have loads of benefits for the physical and mental performance side of the game. But it is a lot. And the hardest part, I think, my athletes and my high performers find is they'll be all motivated to do these extra things for a little bit of time, maybe 2 to 3 weeks. And then something comes up, or they feel like they don't have to, or what's the results or benefits going to be if they keep doing this? And then they stop. And then they're like, oh, like, my performance is kind of plateaued, or like, what's happening? And we're going to look for all these external variables to find, like, what went wrong. And I'm going to say, hey, but like, what did you stop doing? What did you not lean into? What did you not pay attention to? And then it's going to come back to these little different makers that are, like I said, deceptively simple. They're small ways. But when you are consistent in the routines and you just make it a part of your training, your process, you will have a substantial amount of difference. So I know we've covered loads of things that we could start adding in. And I'm telling you, okay, let's just start with one at first. Don't do every day all the things. You will get burnout. And I'm not trying to, I'm not being a very good sports psychologist. I'm like, hey, let me help you burn out right now. Just overload you with everything to think about and, have your mind running a million miles a minute. I'm saying, hey, let's be mindful and intentional, but pay attention to the fact that these things are essential to elevate your game, and start with 1 to 2 things that you can add in, and then consistently see how that's impacting you. And then build from there, right? You're constantly learning to build your game and build things that work. And part of this exploration is figuring out what works for you. Don't fall into the social comparison trap of what everyone else is doing. Listen to the mental tool that is, hey, start doing these little extra things and you will see a 1% gain, but that's for you. So what does that look like for you if you were to time block that out and really say, hey, I'm going to commit to these 1 to 2 things every day for the next month, and then I'm going to reassess, reevaluate, and go from there. So again, Derrick was amazing in his experience and his talking and the stories that he shared. He is wildly successful. And as I mentioned in that podcast, he's one of the most humble, athletes and humans that I've experienced in my world. I'm grateful to have had him on the podcast to share with you. And I hope that you can take away this mental cheat code, doing the extra thing to be 1% better, and see how that will elevate your game.